Hey, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to take on a smaller Ryobi reel from the 70s and the 80s. It was made in Japan, and this little reel came to me. The owner of it said that he's constantly getting line twist and wind knots, and he said it was a problem for him. Could I tune it up and see what I could do? Well, the first thing we're finding is he's got a pretty loose rotor there, and that's usually the result of a rotor nut that's come loose. And he's also got a pretty loose handle here, which is usually because the screw is loose. And he's got a lot of shellacking on this reel, or just plain dried grease. You can start to see it. It's where the cases are, where grease would typically leak out. You can see it on the sides here and the like. So I asked him when he had it serviced last, and I got one of those little impish smiles, which kind of suggests it probably hasn't had it serviced in quite some time. This is an interesting little handle design on this one. This handle has a spring-driven twist. You might be able to see it there. And if you just pull it all the way, you can collapse the handle, and then it'll spring back. So kind of interesting side note to that. So we're going to take this apart. We're going to service it. We're going to get back to him. Hopefully we'll eliminate some of the problems he's been having with the reel, and if nothing else, we can rest assured that it's serviced and ready to go fishing again, that it has a second chance. So we're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces. As I do, I like to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody keeping us safe. And as we're near that 9/11 memorial, I want to just say a special thank you to police, fire, rescue, EMTs, and the like that continue to this day to see the issues that have surrounded their heroic efforts on that day. Thank you very much. All right, there's 3 screws after I remove the handle. The handle has a pin that goes through the main gear, and it's actually a long screw that attaches in this side of the handle. I like to put the screw right back in the handle so that I don't lose it. And I like to put the parts into a parts tray, which is nothing more than the bottom of a plastic jug. There's 3 screws here that are going to hold that side case on. And I don't know, I haven't been inside of one of these reels in a while, but I'm almost expecting to see what I saw when I did a Zebco reel that was made in Japan earlier, not that long ago. And that Zebco reel, I believe, was made by Ryobi. That's why I'm expecting to see a similar setup with a pin and a crosswind arm and a main gear that kind of drives that. And one of the hints would kind of be this anti-reverse here, but we'll see. We'll take this apart and hopefully just clean it up, tune it up, and get it out there fishing again. Tighten up some nuts that have come loose over time. All right, I took the 3 of those screws off. I put them in the bottom of my jug, and I just wanted to make sure that those 3 screws were the same size. They are. No problem there. Now we should be able to remove this, and we do have that same setup. Now the same setup is near identical. We do not have a bushing on the side plate. What we have is a case that has been molded to accept that gear, and it's a pretty tight tolerance. It's no wobble in the gears that we can discern. And what I just did here was I put some penetrating oil onto so that I could get that old grease off. Old grease in particular, is an enemy to fishing reels. It traps dirt, and that dirt acts as an abrasive and cuts down on the performance of the reel, and eventually can erode gears and the like. All right, that case is clean. Yeah, we have a similar setup to what we had with the other one. We have a crosswind arm. We have a pin that holds the axle shaft in. We have a main gear that doubles. This side is going to be for the anti-reverse. The other side of the teeth is going to drive the gear up top here. And the difference between this one and that earlier one that I did with the Zebco is this one has a rotor nut tying the rotor down as opposed to a C-clip. And interestingly enough, I got some dialogue, some questions and comments that I don't like the C-clip. Well, in this case, a C-clip probably would have been better because the rotor wouldn't have come free with a loose rotor nut. All right, once we do that, we can pull up the shaft and remove the spool. And we can see now, we can see how all of that grease that may have been at one time effective is now just kind of along the sides and leaking out. You can see it here as well. It's a pretty aged grease. We're going to remove that crosswind arm, and we're going to clean that. So a lot of what you do when you service a reel, particularly one that's working, just having its issues, a lot of times it's just cleaning it up, inspecting the parts, making sure that they're not broken, and then taking care to re-lube, re-oil, and reassemble. All right, so here's our gear. When I see grease like this, all puddled in one side, it typically tells me that this reel has been sitting for a while. Now, the fellow said he's been fishing it and getting the wind knots, but if you just leave your reel sitting like this for a while, gravity works, right? Gravity will pull that grease down, and that's generally when you see something like that happening. So not sure when the last time you fished it was. We didn't have that conversation. We just had the conversation that said this is why it needs to be repaired. You can see there isn't any grease in the teeth. If there were, you want to clean that. Take a soft bristle brush. You could use a toothbrush if you like. This is a dollar store 3-for-1 pack kind of brush. But make sure that those teeth are clean and then inspect them. Now, we didn't have any performance issues here about reel skipping or doing anything like that. So I'm not keyed to that right away in terms of you got to look for this. But do an inspection. There's no sense spending a lot of time doing the reel repair and just skipping steps. And by the way, it gets you in a good habit if you just kind of become consistent in the way that you approach the reel repair. I'm using cotton swabs to do the cleaning. You have a little bit more grease here. I just want to get that out. This is relatively soft grease. It's not. It's dirty and it's old, but it's not not coagulated and kind of worn over there. That appears to be a 12 millimeter knot. You're going to want to use a deep socket to get to that, or an offset box wrench. There's a lip here. You're not going to be able to do it by a standard wrench. This one happens to be a Mitchell tool, but it works on any 12 millimeter nut, and a lot of these freshwater reels have 12 millimeter nuts. The nut is coming off in a counterclockwise or a traditional way, lefty-loosey if you will, and that appears to be a problem here with this reel, is that the rotor nut was not holding, and I'm just looking in here. There is no tie-down nut. So a lot of times you'll have a little screw that'll sit in a recess here, or you'll have a washer, or you'll have something like that that's going to prevent that nut there from coming loose. In this case, I'm not seeing that. And you want to take some oil, get the oil into the slot for your trip mechanism. And this is kind of interesting how the trip mechanism spring just rests on the case here. So always interested in noting that. Let's see what we have here now. I'm trying to find a clip. Got a lot of dirt and grease in here. I'm thinking we have a bushing here, not a bearing. We have a bushing, not a bearing. That's confirmed after you wipe away the grease. And we have a C-clip here that's holding that assembly in. So I'm going to hold my finger on this side so that I don't shoot the clip as I go to take it out. And then I'm going to use a pick. You can use a small screwdriver if you can fit it in that hole. But I'm going to use a pick to pry out that spring. There you go. That's the spring I was referring to there. That's going to go into my parts tray so that I don't lose that. Now I can pull the main gear and the bushing out. And some people, well, they like to upgrade reels. And this would be an interesting upgrade here. If you can find the bearing to replace the bushing, well, that would improve the performance of this reel. And actually, I'm just going to look real quick. It may just be that it's a standard bearing, and maybe I have one that can jump right in there and do that. Well, the ones I have, I think, are too big. Yeah, they're too big. All right, well, that's an option. If you want to, you could probably search. This reel doesn't seem like it needs it. This bushing's not worn. But if you had a lot of wobble in here and you were wondering what to do, there's no wobble in this at all. But if you had wobble and if you were trying to do that, you could go ahead and grab a caliper and take some measurements and probably find a bearing to replace that bushing and not only hot rod the reel, if you will, but make it perform better because you would take the wobble out of it. This is our pinion gear. I just did the same thing with the pinion gear that I did with the main gear. I just cleaned out the teeth. There's a little washer that goes underneath there. Then the bushing goes on. I want to take my cotton swab or another cotton swab, clean out the channel here. Let's make sure we get all that old grease out of there. And then we can go ahead, grease the bottom of the pinion gear. And I would say that this fellow not giving me that impish grin, if you will, or not remembering when it surfaced, that it's been a while. And I don't even know if he was the original owner of the reel. We didn't have that conversation. But it could be that he just bought one at a flea market or something, put it on a pole, took it fishing, and then ran into a little bit of a problem here with the reel being so loose. And maybe that's why it wound up at a flea market to begin with. Maybe it was loose and not performing well, and they put the line on. Don't know. That's the old thing about if reels could talk. There'd be a lot of interesting stories that I'm sure we would hear from that. All right, I'm just making sure that that bushing is seated. I'm going to take one tag end of that C-clip, retention ring, I'm going to put that in. Just going to walk it around. Usually you can do this with hand strength. Sometimes you can't. So this is a good time to tell you if you like these kinds of videos, if you like learning about how to repair reels, if you enjoy understanding how reels were made and the technologies behind them, then if you subscribe to my channel, I do a lot of that. I do all kinds of fishing reels. We're working on a freshwater spinning reel from Japan now, but I work on everybody's brands and everybody's types of reels, including older reels like this one, newer reels, the latest and greatest. Well, usually it takes about a year for me to see the newer reels. You're in my shop, and over the first year, most of the time those reels are covered by warranties. So if somebody brings one in that's relatively new, I'll ask them when they purchased it and make sure that if it's under warranty that they go back to the company to have that serviced under their warranty plan. But I work on the new ones just as well as the older ones, and just kind of enjoy doing it. The views you get are views of just kind of looking over my shoulders. You are here. Sometimes they're good views, sometimes, well, my hands get in the way and things like that. But if you enjoy that, please hit the subscription button. If you do hit the subscription button, please hit the notifications. That way you'll see all the ones that I'm doing. If you have a question on a reel, and lots of folks have questions all the time. Sometimes they're working on a reel and they get stuck and they have a question about how do I get unstuck. Took the reel apart, didn't take pictures, which I recommend. Kind of lost my place. Or even things like I got the reel apart and this is broken, where do I find a replacement part? Those kinds of things. If I know the answers, I'll be happy to direct you. And if I don't know the answer, try and get you some alternate that might be able to help you with that. All right, we've cleaned this up. We've cleaned the gears. We've greased both sides of the gears. Now we're going to put that arm back in. And when you put the arm in, there's a groove here. That's where the pin is going to ride. So you need to make sure that when you do that arm, that hole in the pinion, a hole in that arm, goes into that groove. That's important. I would normally service a spool, but this spool has washers that are pressed into it, so you can't do anything with them. So we're just going to go ahead and put the spool back on. I've just wiped off the spool. It's clean. It came out nice and easy, so I'm not worried about that. Just going to put a little bit of grease on there. And we'll just go and ride that spool down. Now there's a hole in the spool. It needs to align with the hole in that crosswind arm. So as you put this in, kind of line it up. Pretty much have to look through to get your alignments right. I'm doing this for the camera, and trying to do this at the same time isn't always an easy task. There we go, we got it through. I'm just kind of looking through, and that's the way it should sit. And it should sit with a little bit of a stud here, because the opposing channel over here is where that other stud is going to ride. So that's going to keep it going up and down properly. At this point, you can give it a spin, make sure that everything's turning and going up and down nicely. It is. I'm going to put a little bit more grease onto the outside of this arm here. And the last piece that belongs on here is the first piece that came out, that little washer. That little washer is going to act kind of as a to reduce friction on that case, but it's also going to hold that arm. You can see just a little bit of that tail of that washer goes over that arm, and it holds that in place. To assemble this reel, then, you just want to make sure that your anti-reverse is pretty much up. You're going to bring it in and over like that, and generally speaking, it'll work. If you're stuck, just trip this lever back and forth. That sometimes will help it seat the right way. We have 3 screws then, it's next. And while I'm putting those screws in, some folks ask, do I repair fishing reels by mail? And the answer is yes, I do. If you have a fishing reel that is broken, or one that just needs annual service, and I emphasize annual as opposed to this fellow. His annual service took about 20 years to get here. But if you have one that you'd like me to repair, send a note to my email on the business card that follows. I'll be happy to provide you with that repair information. Hopefully you're learning a lot from these videos and you're doing it yourself. But I know there's some of these reels out there that are intimidating, and if you're not comfortable doing that, or you don't have the time to do that, then by all means contact me. I'll be happy to share that information with you. All right, I'm going to tighten the last one up, and before I put that handle on, I'm going to take one more opportunity here to clean this reel. I'm going to use a rod and reel cleaner. I'm going to use Penn's rod and reel cleaner. It's a cleaner, degreaser, and a little bit of a polish in there too, I guess. And I'm just going to run that where the shellacking was going on the outer case here. You can pretty it up. There's no sense not taking the time. Heck, it might be another few years before this one comes back in. That's okay. Just do my best to make sure that it goes out as nice as it can go out. And just wipe the excess off. That's a nice shiny reel, like it came out of the factory this way. Got a little bit of stuff remaining here. Let's see if we can't get that off. Yeah, looks nice. Now, I know that there's some viewers out there going to do a whole lot better at it than me, like Cons and some other folks that show their pictures on the web. And congratulations to them. All right, we got one more piece now. We got the handle, then we'll give it a test drive. We'll see if it's tightened up at all. I certainly expect that it's a whole lot tighter than it was. It should ride nice because they got all new greases in there. We're going to tighten this one up. This was loose as well. Make sure that we're tight on our rotor. That's not rocking. The handle's not rocking. There you go. All right, we're going to put that click back on. Got a little bit of noisemaker with the handle here. Another thing that's crying out for some grease. So I'm going to just use a little squirt of that penetrating oil. That should take care of that. Look at that. I like these little reels. They're fun. Okay, there you go. The Ryobi SX1. It's got a 4.75 to 1 gear ratio. It's pretty high speed for a smaller 1500 size reel. And this one's ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like it again, please indicate that on the screen. So with that, I'm going to wish you well. Please stay safe, stay well. Thank a first responder, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.